All right, let's talk about a couple more of these week one Power 4 non-con games that we seem to have 100 of coming up here for the start of the college football season in week one. I want to talk about Auburn and Baylor, which comes on tonight, Friday night at 8 o'clock, and then Virginia Tech, South Carolina, which is a Sunday game. That one comes on 3 o'clock on Sunday. I'll be streaming both of these games. Here's a quick look at the streaming schedule for the rest of week one, starting tonight at 8 o'clock right here on YouTube for Auburn, Baylor, like I mentioned, and Georgia Tech and Colorado. Both those games come on at 8. So we'll hang out tonight at 8 o'clock and watch those games and discuss in real time. And then full day tomorrow, Saturday, 9 a.m. to kickoff show. We do that every Saturday morning at 9, followed by the Patreon stream tomorrow at noon. That's the Ohio State-Texas game. Tennessee and Syracuse also on at noon. So that'll be the Patreon stream. Link to the Patreon page, by the way, is in the description of the video. Click that link. Check it out. Tomorrow night, back on YouTube for LSU and Clemson. Sunday, YouTube, Virginia Tech and South Carolina. And Sunday night, another Patreon stream for Notre Dame versus Miami. We'll wrap things up Monday on YouTube with TCU in North Carolina, the Bill Belichick Bowl. So screenshot that and you'll know what the streaming schedule is for the rest of week one. But let's start here with Auburn and Baylor. This feels, it sounds strange. This feels like a must-win game for Auburn to me. If I'm Hugh Freeze and they somehow lose this game on the road tonight at Baylor, he might well just stay in Waco. It's going to be very rough on Hugh Freeze to come back to Auburn if they drop this game tonight to a Big 12 opponent, Baylor. Baylor, not great last year, but turned it on sort of at the end of the season. They started off kind of slow. I think they started off 2-4 and then won their last 6 games. Finished with 8 wins, 1 game out of the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So they, of course, have goals to get there maybe this season. They have a returning quarterback that I think is really good, and I think that's an obvious advantage in this game for Baylor. If you just look at the 2 quarterbacks, the reality with Jackson Arnold at Auburn, at some point, we're going to have to start talking about his high school recruiting rating and his potential and his ceiling and his ability. He's going to have to start playing at a high level on Saturdays at some point. I mean, you could only live off of your recruiting ranking for so long. He had an opportunity, of course, last year at Oklahoma, and it didn't go well. And I don't place all of the blame for that on Jackson Arnold. I think they had a poor offensive staff last year. Oklahoma did. They were obviously riddled with injuries at the wide receiver position. They had issues above and beyond Jackson Arnold. That is true at Oklahoma last year. But Jackson Arnold didn't do anything to make those issues better. He was not good. I mean, there's really not a silver lining, I don't think, for how Jackson Arnold played last season at Oklahoma. If you're an Auburn fan or you're someone that is wanting Jackson Arnold to have a good season, then you're going to have to sort of bank on the fact that maybe Hugh Freeze is just able to get something out of Jackson Arnold or turn him into something that they were unable to do at Oklahoma. And I do think that's possible. I mean, not everybody is great their first year as a starter. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will always be bad. We've seen quarterbacks get better over time. Hell, we see players at every position get better over time, and better coaching can help bring that out. So I'm not convinced that Jackson Arnold won't be a high-level quarterback or will never be a good college quarterback. I'm not convinced that he won't. But I'm also not convinced that he will. I mean, we haven't seen anything from him so far that tells us that. So I'm kind of cutting it right down the middle with Jackson Arnold. Is it possible he gets better? Yeah. Do I think it's a good idea to have blind faith in that? No. And so I think Baylor here has the obvious advantage at the quarterback position. You got a veteran quarterback who had a really good year last year on a team that returns a lot of talent playing at home. The quarterback advantage, in my mind, is pretty clear, and it goes to Baylor. Everywhere else, you can make a case for Auburn. I like Auburn along the lines of scrimmage in this game. I think Auburn's got one of the best wide receiving groups in the country. Now, they did lose their leading rusher from last year, so they will have to replace that. Defensively, I like their front seven. Talent acquisition, for the most part, really hasn't been the problem at Auburn, particularly under Hugh Freeze. I feel like they've recruited pretty well, brought in some pretty good players, both through high school recruiting and the portal. The big issue has been quarterback. 2 years there, Hugh Freeze, yet to have a winning record. Auburn, has had a losing record 4 years in a row. Haven't I don't think Auburn's had a winning record since COVID, or maybe not even in 2019. It's been one of the worst stretches of Auburn football since like the 50s. You got to go back 50 or 60 years to find a 4 or 5 year period of Auburn football that's been this bad. And this leads me back to the point I made at the beginning about Hugh Freeze. Going into year 3, people are out of patience. College football fans in general don't tend to have a lot of patience to start with. But now, in the age of the portal and the ability to immediately fix things, or at least attempt to immediately fix things, you can't be in a situation at Auburn where in your 3rd year, after having 2 losing seasons, you go on the road and lose to Big 12 Baylor. That can't happen. Baylor, on the other hand, it feels like they need to win this game, too. This would give them some positive momentum. They've got a tough non-con schedule, too. Baylor does. They host Auburn tonight. They also play SMU in the non-con, which is a ranked opponent, at least for now. We'll see if they stay ranked this year. They got a tougher schedule, SMU does, this year than they did last year. But anyway, so they have 2 Power 4 non-con opponents, Baylor does, in addition to their non-conference game Big 12 schedule. So Baylor plays 11 Power 4 opponents this year. So while winning the Big 12 is, of course, a guaranteed path into the playoffs because, at least for now, conference winners are still guaranteed a spot in there. If they don't win the Big 12, then having some wins over teams like Auburn and SMU would help prop up their resume at the end of the year. Say they're sitting there at 10-2 maybe, but don't win the Big 12. Anyway, that's sort of looking down the road and getting ahead of ourselves. They're expecting a close game here. Auburn is about a 2 or a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite, depending on where you look. And it's actually come down more towards Baylor's favor over the last day or two. Auburn was about a 2.5 or a 3 point favorite. If you look today, you can find it at around 1.5. So late money, at least some late money coming in on Baylor. The over under in this game is it 52.5? I looked it up right before we started here. I like the under here. 57.5 is the over under right now on this game. I like the under. I don't know if either team really is going to be able to score all that much to hit this over here early in the season. Defenses tend to be ahead of the offenses, generally speaking, anyway. And when you look at Auburn, most of my question marks about Auburn involve their quarterback, Jackson Arnold. I like them defensively, and I think they'll be able to keep Baylor in check for the most part. It seems like this is the type of thing. I trust Baylor more. I'm tripping all over my words here. I trust Baylor more in this game to have more consistent drives, to be more consistent offensively. I like Auburn's ability to hit some big plays in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn punts the ball twice as much as Baylor does, something like that. But Auburn's going to have the explosive plays here. And, you got Cam Coleman and is it Singleton, the other wide receiver? They've got elite level wide receivers. And Jackson Arnold doesn't have to be great, but if he can hit them a couple of times, right, a couple of big plays. Baylor, more consistent offensively. But is anybody getting into the 30s here? I went back and forth on this game really all offseason. I leaned Auburn for most of the offseason. Auburn has a significant talent advantage in this game, top to bottom on the roster, whether you're talking about the talent ranking index or just the eye test. Outside of the quarterback position, Auburn is, generally speaking, a more talented football team than Baylor. But quarterback is a very important position, and you've heard me talk about this a lot with Hugh Freeze. Some coaches, some offenses, some schemes, some offensive philosophies are very quarterback dependent in that they need a certain type of quarterback that can run their particular offense at a very high level in order for them to have any success at all as a team. That's how I look at a Hugh Freeze team. If you go back and look at some of Hugh Freeze's best teams, it was when he had, high level quarterback play. His first couple of years at Auburn, he hasn't had that. It's been a disaster. It's just been turnover fest and rotating quarterbacks and playing 2 or 3 quarterbacks in a game. It's just been a mess quarterback wise. They've managed to build the talent at the other positions around the quarterback. But like the wide receivers, for example, they didn't have a quarterback that could take advantage of the talent those wide receivers had last year. Is Jackson Arnold that? Well, He might be, but we haven't seen anything that shows that he is. I'm not betting $1 on the winner of this game. I won't be surprised if Baylor wins by a touchdown. I won't be surprised if Auburn wins by a touchdown. If it's going to be a blowout, it would probably be in Auburn's favor. If Jackson Arnold comes out and plays at a high level, it's possible that the Baylor defense just can't slow him down. Now, the secondary could become an issue for Baylor in this game tonight against Auburn if Jackson Arnold gets hot. I'm going to go with Baylor. It's hard for me to get a good read on this game here. I'm not going to bet $1 on the winner of this game. It could go either way. I'm going to go with the home team, who happens to have the better quarterback as well in this game, in Sawyer Roberts. I trust him more than I trust Jackson Arnold. I do think Auburn is a more talented team. I do think Auburn can win this game. It's going to involve controlling both lines of scrimmage, which they have a very good chance of doing. There's a talent mismatch there. There's a size mismatch there. And if they can connect on some big plays through the air, if Jackson Arnold can get hot, and most importantly, if Auburn can avoid the turnovers, that's really been what has sunk Auburn, particularly last year. It's just way too many turnovers in these types of games. And what I mean by these types of games is teams that Auburn could beat, teams that they're close to, and they keep losing them because of turnovers. So I don't know. I'm going to take the home team and the better quarterback. I'm going to take Baylor in a close one. All right, let's move on to Virginia Tech and South Carolina. This is an interesting game too. SEC versus ACC here. South Carolina, a lot of hype coming out of last season into this season. They, of course, returned Lenore Sellers at quarterback, who was one of the most exciting players in all of college football last year. Really had a breakout season for them. Took some games over. Made Clemson look silly in that regular season finale and rivalry weekend. I mean, he had some huge games. South Carolina had that big game at Alabama last year where they nearly won at the end. South Carolina 9-3 last year, barely missing out on the playoffs. A chance maybe to crash the party this year, although they do have a difficult schedule. But Lenore Sellers is back. They've got Nick Harbor at tight end / wide receiver. They're going to have a good defense again. Now, they lost some big contributors up front, but I think they're going to be okay defensively, especially in this game here. If South Carolina's going to have issues up front defensively due to attrition from losing players from last year, that will probably show up in the sort of middle half of the season where they start playing. They have a stretch of games where they play like LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ole Miss or something like that, 4 games in a row. So we'll see how they hold up over the course of the season going through that 4-game stretch. But here, with most of the players healthy, they just got that running back cleared. Took so long on that. But I like South Carolina in this game. I don't think there's any sense in even waiting on a pick to the end on this one. They're a significant favorite here. South Carolina is. So there you go. My pick for this one, South Carolina. They're a significant favorite here. They're a more talented team than Virginia Tech. They're a better coaching staff. They're a better coach than Virginia Tech. It would be massively disappointing and a significant upset in my mind if South Carolina were to lose this game on Sunday. Again, this is a Sunday game to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has kind of floundered around for the better part of the last 15 or 20 years, really since Shane Beamer's dad, Frank Beamer, retired as head coach from there. They've kind of floated around a handful of different coaches over the last 10 or 15 years. None of them have really had much success. And last year was an extremely disappointing year for Virginia Tech. There was a lot of people, myself included, who bought into the Virginia Tech hype at this time last year, heading into 2024. And what happened? Virginia Tech came out in week 1 and lost to Vanderbilt. Now, I know Vanderbilt beat Alabama last year, but Vanderbilt wasn't a great team last year. Were they better than the average Vanderbilt team over the years? Yeah, they were a little better. Diego Poverty's a good quarterback, right? They weren't a great team. And Virginia Tech lost to them, and it was just kind of downhill from there for that Virginia Tech team. A disappointing 2024. I can't buy into it again. I think South Carolina is a legitimately good team. I don't know that they're great. I don't know that they're good enough to get into a 12-team playoff or make the SEC championship, but I could see them potentially having another 8 or 9 win season. They're favored by 7.5 in this one. I said I'm not going to bet on the Auburn-Baylor game. I probably would bet on this one, South Carolina and Virginia Tech. I think it's possible South Carolina wins this game by 2 or 3 scores. I am higher on South Carolina than some South Carolina fans I know. So I don't know. Maybe they know something. Maybe they know something that I don't. I am a little worried about their running game offensively, but Lenore Sellers can help neutralize that because he can sort of pick up some of the slack running game wise that maybe they lost from last year heading into this year. And like I said, defensively, yes, they lost some really great players up front, but I like what they have there. They've got some NFL players in the front seven. I think their secondary is good enough, especially against this Virginia Tech team, to hold them in check. The over-under on this one is 51.5. I don't really have a lean or a feeling on that. If South Carolina and Lenore Sellers gets hot, they could score in the 30s easily. And maybe the total does go over 51.5. But I do like South Carolina to win this one and start the season hot. And they need to win this one too. In a lot of years when you look at South Carolina, this would be like a 50-50 game or something like that. They've got to be past that. If they want to be a threat to make the playoffs, if they want to be sort of a 8-9+ win team every year, as opposed to the maybe they're going to win 5 or maybe they're going to win 7, which is kind of what they've always been. These are the types of games we got to get to the point where we go, yeah, South Carolina's winning that one. I don't have to really think that much about it. And I think that's the case. Shane Beamer has done what I think is an amazing job at South Carolina. He has exceeded South Carolina's expected win total, something like, is it 4 out of 5 years or 3 out of 5? They tend to be better every year with Beamer than the expectations. That might be hard to do this year because the expectations are a little higher this year based on the 9-win season a year ago. But I do like South Carolina here. This is a neutral site game in Atlanta. I think I failed to mention that. So neutral site game in Atlanta. So not technically a home game for either team. Obviously, Atlanta much closer to Columbia than Blacksburg, Virginia. Columbia to Atlanta, how far is that? Well, I-20 runs from Columbia to Atlanta. Augusta's right in the middle. Takes me an hour to get to Columbia one direction, 2 hours to get to Atlanta the other. That tells me with my Georgia math that it's about a 3-hour drive from Columbia, to Atlanta. All of that depends on traffic, though. Let me lay that out because the good idiots over at Georgia Tech have screwed up the Atlanta traffic patterns to the point where it's an abomination. Really, Georgia Tech ought to be ashamed of themselves. Engineer, hell of an engineer. Yeah, engineer. You ain't no street engineer or whatever the fuck they calling that city planner shit. Y'all are terrible at that. Georgia Tech is. They blew up this Challenger too. Georgia Tech, that's Georgia Tech's fault too. The Challenger explosion. Anyway, this isn't a Georgia Tech video. Already did that. Georgia Tech plays tonight at 8 o'clock. They travel to Colorado. Let me say this about that game. I like South Carolina to win and cover, by the way, and I'll probably bet South Carolina -7.5. So give me South Carolina to win. Give me Baylor to win, but I'm telling you, I don't really have a feeling on. I leaned Auburn all off season. The closer we get to that thing, I'm like, can I really trust Jackson Arnold? Here's my thing with Auburn to wrap that up, and then we'll get out of here. I think Auburn has potential to be a pretty good team. Some of y'all might notice I do these prediction videos. I picked Auburn to beat Georgia this year. Okay, so Auburn has enough talent to win 8 or 9 games. But getting back to the thing about Hugh Freeze and how he has to have a certain type of quarterback. If Jackson Arnold's not that, then they're going to hover around bowl eligibility again, and they won't beat Georgia, nor will they beat Baylor. So it's not that I don't have any faith or confidence in Auburn at all. I've got them beating Georgia and having their best year since 2019, okay? But I need to see Jackson Arnold play a game before I can confidently come on video and pick them to win against what I think is a decent Baylor team, a team that I think has a shot to win the Big 12, right? I need to see it. So I'm going to pick Baylor to win the game tonight against Auburn, even though I'm not betting on it. And I'm going to take South Carolina, who I am pretty high on. I think Lenore Sellers could have a monster game Sunday against Virginia Tech. That could happen. Anyway, I'll take South Carolina to win and cover over Virginia Tech. All right, I'll see you guys tonight at 8 o'clock for the game stream. More energy today. I was down bad yesterday. I was tired. I really had no business streaming that Nebraska game. Energy level was -1 million. I done fixed that problem. Had me a good night's sleep, and I'm ready to go. So tonight, 8 o'clock, Georgia Tech and Colorado, and Auburn and Baylor. We will hang out, watch the games, react to them. You know the deal. Come watch the games with us. We have a really good time. All right, appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.